there's a couple of examples of people who seem to be pro-fascism in the 1930s in Britain, famous people anyway, and the first one is Edward VIII, who was he was the Prince of Wales up until 1936, and then became Edward VIII for a short while, and then after he abdicated, he became the Duke of Windsor. And he was a friend of Mosley, but it was only after he'd abdicated really that he showed his true colours when he went to visit Hitler in 1937 and gave him a full Nazi salute. He was in favour of fascism as a bulwark, or as a buffer to communism, and possibly wanted an alliance with Germany. Even after the war had started, he may, some people have suggested, have possibly even wanted to come back and lead the British if Hitler had won. He did admit to being pro-German after the war, but he did call Hitler a ridiculous figure. So there are some doubts as to how fascist he was, bearing in mind his family was German anyway. He was the king was pro-German in a way, but was he a fascist? I mean, the England football team gave Hitler the Nazi salute as well. Does him just doing that make him a fascist? From what I've heard, he did seem to have a degree of sympathy towards the fascists. The other guy really who was possibly pro-fascist, or seemed to be, especially in the early years of Nazi Germany, was David Lloyd George, who met Hitler in 1936 at Berchtesgaden, and he actually came out with some quite public comments in favour of Adolf Hitler, saying how much he admired the confidence he'd instilled in Germany and how people seem to be a lot happier there now. Bearing in mind, this is a guy that was at Versailles for Britain and actually wanted to revise the Treaty of Versailles in Germany's favour, but he came back with glowing reports of Hitler, saying that he was the greatest living German and that he was Germany's George Washington. And despite him saying that, I think, well, I know later on he became more anti-appeasement and eventually, sided with Churchill in some things in his policy against appeasement. So it may have just been that Lord George was duped by Hitler for that particular period, and he came back with the the euphoria of having been to Germany, and made these comments. But it seemed at the time that Lloyd George was not pro-fascist but sympathetic to them.